Long before our names were written, warriors understood a silent law. The mind is the first battlefield, and the spirit is the final blade. In the samurai path, they called it Hagane no Ishi, a will like steel, forged in fire, hammered by hardship, cooled by discipline. Yet even the sharpest sword faces three silent enemies that dull its edge: doubt, comfort, and fear. These enemies do not shout, they whisper, they wait, they soften your spirit from within. Tonight, I'm not speaking to spectators. I'm speaking to warriors in training. If you feel that calling, comment, "I'm ready." Subscribe and stand with this clan of modern samurai who refuse to live with a dull spirit. Every view, every like, every comment is not just support, it is another hammer strike in your forging. Thank you for being part of this circle of warriors, choosing growth over escape, choosing discipline over distraction. Together, we will confront the three enemies of mental toughness and turn them into fuel for our fire. Awareness of the inner battlefield begins with a simple but terrifying truth. Most people are fighting a war they cannot see. The samurai understood that no sword, no armor, no technique could save a warrior who was blind to the enemy within. Before they stepped onto the field, they had already stepped into themselves, examining their fears, their attachments, their illusions. For you, the modern warrior, the inner battlefield is your mind, the place where doubt, fear, laziness, and self-sabotage rise like unseen assassins. When you wake up and feel heavy for no reason, when you hold your phone instead of your purpose, when you find yourself delaying what matters, that is the battlefield. Awareness is the moment you stop moving on autopilot and finally see the conflict taking place inside. It is not about judging yourself harshly, but about observing honestly. It is looking at your thoughts and saying, "This is not me, this is my enemy in disguise." And in that recognition, you take your first step toward mental toughness. Imagine a forge where steel is tested by heat and pressure. Your mind is no different. Life applies heat in the form of stress, pressure, and uncertainty, but awareness allows you to understand what is truly being tested. Without awareness, pain feels pointless. With awareness, pain becomes information. When your heart races before a difficult conversation, when your chest tightens before a challenge, that reaction is not weakness. It is your nervous system ringing an alarm bell. The enemy is not the feeling itself, but your unconscious reaction to it. Avoiding, taobi, numbing, running. Awareness lets you pause and witness. My body is reacting, my mind is resisting, but I will not obey this impulse blindly. The samurai cultivated zansen, a state of relaxed, alert presence, so they could sense danger before it arrived. You must train something similar, becoming present enough to see when your mind begins to retreat, when your excuses form, when your energy shifts. The more precisely you can notice this moment, the more power you have to choose your response, instead of surrendering to habit. Awareness of the inner battlefield also means recognizing the stories you tell yourself, because stories are the shadows in which the enemies of mental toughness hide. Doubt says, "You're not good enough." Comfort whispers, "You've done enough today, rest a little more." Fear warns, "What if you fail? What will they think?" These voices do not introduce themselves as enemies. They sound like your own voice, your own reason, your own logic. This is why an untrained mind obeys them without question. Awareness separates you from these stories. You begin to say, "I am hearing a story of weakness, but I don't have to believe it." The samurai believed in Bushido, the way of the warrior, a code that stood higher than temporary feelings. When you choose a code, discipline, honor, consistency, courage, you gain a standard that exposes your inner lies. The story that says, "I can't," shatters when held against the truth that you have endured pain before and survived. The story that says, "I'll do it later," collapses when confronted with the reality that time is not guaranteed. Awareness is like light in a dark room. It doesn't fight the shadows, it dissolves them. Finally, awareness of the inner battlefield is an ongoing discipline, not a one-time realization. Just as a warrior continuously sharpens his blade, you must continuously sharpen your perception of self. Throughout your day, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What am I avoiding? What am I reaching for? Growth or escape? Each honest answer is another step closer to mastery. You begin to notice how quickly you reach for distraction when tasks get hard, how your posture changes when you lack confidence, how your breathing shortens when fear enters. This is not meant to make you paranoid. It is meant to make you powerful. When you can see the battlefield clearly, you can position yourself strongly. In Japanese thought, there is the idea of shin, the heart-mind, the true center of one's being. Awareness is the act of returning to shin again and again, especially when chaos rises. In that return, you stop living as a slave to hidden forces and start living as a warrior who knows exactly where the battle is, and more importantly, who they must become to win it. Discipline over emotion is not the absence of feeling, it is the mastery of feeling. The samurai did not become fearless by being born without fear. They became fearless because they refused to let fear decide their actions. In your life, emotions rise and fall like waves: anger, sadness, anxiety, excitement, temptation. Most people are dragged by these waves, thrown from one mood to another, calling it just how I am. But a warrior understands, emotion is weather, discipline is climate. Discipline is the unseen code that holds your actions steady, even when storms flood your heart. When you feel unmotivated but still show up, when you feel anxious but still speak, when you feel lazy but still move forward, you are practicing discipline over emotion. This is not coldness, it's maturity. It is the choice to honor your commitments more than your cravings, your purpose more than your passing moods. In the forge of life, emotion is the fire and discipline is the hammer. Fire alone melts steel into shapeless weakness, but when guided by the hammer, that same fire shapes a blade. Your anger can make you destructive, or it can fuel your focus. Your fear can paralyze you, or it can sharpen your awareness. Your sadness can sink you, or it can deepen your empathy and resolve. The difference is discipline, the ability to pause between feeling and action. The samurai trained this pause endlessly through ritual, repetition, and kata, precise repeated movements that carved steadfastness into muscle and mind. You too must build rituals that steady you. Morning routines, training schedules, time blocks for work, rules for your phone, promises you do not break. When your emotions flare, these structures act like rails, keeping the train of your life from derailing into chaos. Discipline gives emotion a direction, instead of letting it explode in every direction. To place discipline over emotion, you must first accept that your feelings are not commands, they are signals. A feeling of tiredness may signal that you need rest, or that you are close to a breakthrough. A feeling of fear may signal danger or growth. A feeling of boredom may signal misalignment or resistance to doing what's necessary. Without discipline, you interpret every signal as a stop sign. With discipline, you interpret them as information and decide consciously. The Japanese concept of mershin, the no-mind, points toward a state where action is not hijacked by overthinking and emotional turbulence. It doesn't mean you feel nothing, it means you are not enslaved by what you feel. When you act from your code, not your mood, you start to experience a quiet power. The ability to do what must be done even when you don't feel like it. This is the moment you shift from being a prisoner of emotion to a commander of it. Cultivating discipline over emotion is a daily battle, not a one-time victory. There will be mornings when your mind begs for comfort, nights when your heart aches, moments when your pride screams louder than your wisdom. In these moments, remember, the warrior is not the one who never falls. The warrior is the one who rises according to principle, not impulse. Ask yourself, What does my path demand of me right now? Not what do I feel like doing? Make small repeated choices. One more rep, one more hour, one more honest conversation, one more step toward your goal. Each choice is a strike of the hammer, shaping your character. Over time, something changes inside you. You begin to trust yourself because you know you won't betray your mission just because your emotions shift. That trust is mental toughness. That is your inner Bushido, a personal code where discipline stands above emotion and guides your spirit like a steady hand on the sword, no matter how fiercely the storms of feeling rage within. Embracing discomfort as a forge means understanding that pain is not always your enemy. Often it is your greatest teacher. The samurai did not chase comfort. They sought challenge, because they knew that only through hardship could their spirit be tempered like steel. In your world, discomfort arrives in subtler forms. Waking up early when your body begs for sleep. Speaking truth when silence feels safer. Doing the hard task when distraction is a tap away. Most people flee from these moments, seeing discomfort as something to avoid at all costs. But a warrior of the mind recognizes them as the very fire that shapes who they become. When you choose the harder path on purpose, you are stepping willingly into the forge. The heat of discomfort reveals your weak points, your excuses, your limits. It shows you exactly where you still need to grow, and that is a gift. In the forge, raw metal is heated until it glows, then struck again and again. Without this violent process, it remains brittle and unreliable. Your mind is no different. Without resistance, without weight, pressure, stress, it stays fragile. When you push through an intense workout, when you study while your brain protests, when you stay disciplined while your friends choose easy pleasures, you are hammering your own spirit into something tougher. The Japanese concept of sabaru reflects this. The idea of enduring, persisting, doing your best even when things are difficult or uncomfortable. To embrace discomfort is to say, I will stay in the fire a little longer because I know what it's doing to me. You stop asking, how can I make this easier? And start asking, how can this make me stronger? This subtle shift transforms suffering into training and obstacles into opportunities for sharpening your inner blade. However, embracing discomfort as a forge does not mean mindlessly chasing pain for its own sake. A wise warrior knows the difference between purposeful hardship and pointless self-destruction. The goal is not to burn yourself out, but to deliberately step into challenges that expand your capacity. Cold showers, early mornings, hard conversations, disciplined routines, learning new skills, facing your fears, these all forms of voluntary discomfort that train your nervous system to stay calm and focused under stress. Each time you endure, your threshold increases. What once felt unbearable becomes normal. What once scared you becomes manageable. Over time, the forge of discomfort rewires your relationship with challenge. Instead of panicking when life heats up, you recognize the sensation and think, I've trained for this. That confidence is not born from theory. It is earned in the fire of repeated effort. To live as a modern samurai of the mind, you must make discomfort a companion, not a curse. This means intentionally designing your life with frictions that force growth, goals that scare you a little, standards that stretch you, habits that demand effort. There will be moments when you want to retreat back into ease, when your mind screams for the soft pillow of comfort. In those moments, remember that comfort never forged legends, it only preserved mediocrity. The Japanese understanding of mujo, the impermanence of all things, reminds you that pain, fatigue, and struggle do not last forever, but the strength they create can. When you walk willingly into discomfort with this mindset, you transform every hard day into a training ground. The forge becomes familiar, the fire becomes your ally, and slowly you emerge as someone different, not untouched by hardship, but unbroken by it, shaped into a blade that does not shatter when life strikes. Mastery of thought and focus begins with recognizing that your mind is not a quiet garden. It is a wild battlefield of voices, images, and impulses. Most people live as if every thought is true and every distraction is important. The samurai could not afford such chaos. Before they mastered the sword, they learned to master their mind, because a scattered mind cannot deliver a precise strike. In your life, the enemies of mental toughness often appear first as undisciplined thoughts. I can't do this. I'll never change. It's too late. I'll start tomorrow. These are not harmless ideas. They are seeds that grow into habits, actions, and ultimately your destiny. Mastery of thought means stepping back and seeing your thoughts as clouds passing across the sky, not commands engraved in stone. When you learn to observe your mind, instead of instantly obeying it, you reclaim control over the direction of your life. Focus in the way of the warrior is not just concentration, it is devotion. It is choosing one target and giving it your full presence while the world tries to pull you apart. The Japanese concept of ichigeki hisatsu, one strike certain kill, reflects a level of focus where everything is poured into the moment of action. For you, this might mean 1 hour of undistracted work, one deep conversation where you give everything you have. Yet today, the mind is constantly fragmented by notifications, scrolling, and endless choices. Every time you allow your attention to be stolen, your power is drained. Mastery of focus is not about having superhuman willpower. It is about deliberately designing your environment and habits so that your attention is protected like a sacred flame. Turn off what pulls you away, schedule what matters, and train your mind to stay with what you start. To master thought and focus, you must understand that your mind follows patterns. If you allow it to wander aimlessly every day, it will resist discipline like an untrained horse. But if you repeatedly bring it back, gently yet firmly, it begins to obey. Practices like deep breathing, meditation, journaling, and single tasking are not soft routines. They are your mental kata, repetitive drills that carve clarity and stillness into your inner world. The Japanese idea of mushin, the no mind, points to a state where thoughts no longer conflict and chatter. Instead, there is a calm readiness, a clear channel between intention and action. You don't overthink, you simply do. This doesn't appear magically. It is born from thousands of moments where you train yourself to return to the task, to the breath, to the goal, whenever your mind tries to escape into distraction or doubt. Ultimately, mastery of thought and focus is an act of spiritual leadership over yourself. It is choosing which thoughts you will feed and which you will starve. When a thought of weakness appears, you acknowledge it, but feed a thought of strength. When your mind says this is too hard, you respond with, this is how I grow. When distraction whispers, just check your phone, you remind yourself, my purpose is more important than my impulse. Over time, the dominant voice in your mind changes. It stops being the voice of fear and becomes the voice of your higher self, your inner warrior. In Japanese, there is kokoro, the heart-mind, the core of who you are. Mastery of thought and focus is the process of aligning that core with your values and your vision until your mind is no longer a chaotic battlefield, but a disciplined army marching in one direction. When your thoughts obey your purpose and your focus holds steady like a drawn bow, mental toughness stops being an idea and becomes your way of living. Courage in the face of fear does not mean the absence of fear. It means walking forward while fear walks beside you. The samurai knew death could meet them at any sunrise, yet they did not let that knowledge freeze their steps. Instead, it sharpened their awareness and deepened their resolve. In your life, fear shows up in different armor. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. These fears whisper, stay where you are. Don't risk it. Don't try. If you listen, your life becomes a small, guarded circle. Courage is the decision to step outside that circle, knowing your heart will pound and your hands may shake. It is not a loud roar. Often, it is a quiet, steady, I will move anyway. Each time you do something important while afraid, you weaken the chains fear has around your spirit. In the forge of the warrior, fear is the heat that tests what you truly believe. It exposes whether your values are real or just words. The Japanese understood this through concepts like Yi-yo, brave courage rooted in righteousness. True courage is not reckless, it is guided by a higher purpose. You don't face fear just to prove you are tough. You face it because something greater is calling you. A dream, a responsibility, a transformation. When you stand before a hard conversation, a risky decision, a new path, fear will paint vivid pictures of everything that could go wrong. Courage answers with a different image, the future you will never meet if you keep bowing to fear. In that clash of visions, you must choose which reality you will serve. The samurai chose honor over comfort. You must choose growth over safety, again and again, if you wish to build true mental toughness. Courage in the face of fear is built through small acts, not dramatic moments. Most people wait for some grand test to prove their bravery, but the training ground is in your everyday choices. Speaking up when your voice trembles, taking the first step toward a big goal, admitting a mistake, asking for help, starting when you feel unready. These are all quiet victories over fear. Each one is a hammer strike on the steel of your character. The Japanese spirit of ganbate, do your best, keep going, reflects this steady courage. You don't need to eliminate fear to act. You only need to move one step further than your fear wants you to. Over time, your nervous system learns that fear is not a death sentence. It is a signal that you are stretching your limits. The more you walk into it, the less power it has. What once felt impossible becomes merely challenging. What once terrified you becomes simply the next step on your path. To live with courage in the face of fear is to accept that fear will always exist at the edge of your growth. There is no version of you, no level of success, where fear completely disappears. The samurai understood this through Mujo, the impermanence and uncertainty of all things. Because life is unpredictable, fear is natural, but you are not called to be controlled by what is natural. You are called to rise above it. When fear appears, name it, feel it, and then ask, what action would honor my path right now? Then do that, even if your heart races. Each time you choose action aligned with your values over paralysis driven by fear, you reinforce a new identity, the one who moves anyway. Slowly, the story you tell yourself changes from, I am afraid, so I sharpen. That is the essence of courage. Not a life without fear, but a spirit that stands tall in its presence and keeps walking forward, blade steady, eyes clear. Detachment from ego and outcome begins with understanding how easily the mind chains itself to illusion. The samurai were trained to fight as if already dead, not because they were careless with life, but because they refused to let fear of loss control their actions. In your world, ego ties you to praise, comparison, and identity. I am my success. I am my failure. I am what others think of me. Outcome ties you to results, views, likes, money, status, validation. When these become your masters, your spirit becomes fragile. A little criticism cuts deep. A small failure shatters your confidence. Detachment is not apathy. It is freedom. It is the ability to give everything to your path without letting your sense of worth rise and fall with every win or loss. You still care, you still strive, but you no longer worship the mirror of other people's opinions or the scoreboard of external results. In the forge of the warrior, ego is like impurities in steel. It makes the blade brittle. The Japanese concept of mushin, no mind, points to a state where action flows without the constant interference of what does this say about me. When ego leads, you hesitate, you overthink, you play to impress instead of to improve. You fear looking foolish, so you avoid challenges that might expose your weaknesses. Detachment from ego allows you to learn like a beginner, even when you have experience. You accept correction, you embrace criticism, you admit when you're wrong. This humility is not weakness, it is the most powerful stance for growth. A sword that refuses to be hammered will never be sharp. A mind that refuses to be humbled will never be wise. When you detach from ego, you no longer defend a fake image, you protect your real progress. Detachment from outcome means shifting your focus from what you can't control to what you can. You cannot control how people react, how quickly rewards arrive, or whether every effort leads to visible success. You can only control your preparation, your attitude, your consistency, your integrity. The Japanese idea of shikata ganai, it cannot be helped, reflects an acceptance of what lies beyond one's power. This is not an excuse to be passive. It is an invitation to pour your energy into the present action with full intensity. Then release your grip on what happens next. When you obsess over outcomes, anxiety grows. When you obsess over effort and improvement, confidence grows. Detachment lets you say, I will give my best, and whatever comes, I will use it. Wins become fuel, losses become lessons. Either way, you stay on the path. To live with detachment from ego and outcome is to walk the warrior's path with calm eyes and a steady heart. You still set goals, but they no longer define your value. You still want to win, but you are not destroyed when you stumble. The Japanese concept of fudoshin, the immovable mind, captures this state. A grounded spirit that is not easily shaken by praise or blame, success or failure. You begin to act not to prove but to express who you are becoming. Each day you ask, did I live my code? Did I train my mind? Did I honor my path? If the answer is yes, then you are already winning, no matter what the outside world says. This quiet, unshakable center is where true mental toughness is born. Not in loud victories, but in the silent decision to keep walking, ego lowered, outcomes surrendered, spirit focused only on the next honest step. Unbreakable commitment to the path is the moment your journey stops being a casual wish and becomes a sacred vow. The samurai did not try to live by their code. They bound themselves to it with their life. In your world, goals are often treated like hobbies, followed when convenient, dropped when they become heavy. But mental toughness is not born from half-hearted attempts. It is forged when you decide, deep in the quiet of your own heart, I will not turn back. This doesn't mean you never feel tired, discouraged, or lost. It means that no matter how heavy those feelings become, you remain tied to your path like a ship anchored in a storm. The Japanese concept of Ishin, one heart, one mind, one intention, reflects this state of total alignment. Your thoughts, actions, and choices begin to serve one clear direction, instead of scattering your energy in 100 different ways. Unbreakable commitment is tested not on days of motivation, but on days of doubt. When everything flows easily, commitment feels natural. But the true measure of your dedication appears when the results are slow, when progress is invisible, when no one is watching or praising you. This is where most people quietly quit. They may still talk about their dreams, but their actions drift away from them. The warrior of the mind does the opposite. They tighten their grip when the path grows darker. The Japanese spirit of ganbaru or gambate, to persist, to endure, to do one's best despite hardship, lives inside this commitment. You show up for your training, your work, your growth, even when your emotions protest. You place your code above your comfort, your vision above your excuses. Each time you do this, you hammer another layer of steel into your character. To hold unbreakable commitment to the path, you must accept that the path itself will change you. There will be versions of you that cannot make the journey. Old habits, weak identities, limiting beliefs that must die for the stronger self to emerge. This is why commitment is frightening. Deep down you know that staying loyal to your path means letting go of the softer, easier life you once imagined. Friends may drift away. Old pleasures may lose their shine. There will be sacrifices of time, comfort, sometimes reputation. The Japanese understanding of shugyo, austere, disciplined training for spiritual and personal refinement, captures this. The path is not simply about achieving a goal, it is about refining who you are. When you commit fully, you're not just saying, I want this outcome. You're saying, I am willing to become the person this path requires. Ultimately, unbreakable commitment to the path becomes a quiet, constant fire inside you. It no longer needs to shout or impress anyone. It simply burns. You stop negotiating with yourself every day about whether you will show up. The decision has already been made. Your only question is, how will I give my best today? The Japanese idea of kaizen, continuous improvement, becomes your companion. You are not obsessed with perfection. You are obsessed with staying in motion, step by step, year after year. Setbacks still hurt, failures still sting, but nothing makes you abandon the road. You rest when needed, adapt when required, but you do not quit. In time, this unwavering loyalty to your path becomes your greatest strength. Life's storms may bend you, but they do not break you. You have become like tempered steel, not because the journey was easy, but because you refused to leave it, no matter how fierce the fire became. Daily rituals of mental training are the quiet, unseen battles that shape who you become long before the world ever notices. The samurai did not wait for war to sharpen their blades. They practiced every day in stillness and repetition so that when the moment of truth arrived, their mind and body were already prepared. In your life, the war is not fought only in big decisions, but in the small, repeated choices you make from sunrise to nightfall, scrolling or studying, complaining or reflecting, reacting or responding. Mental toughness is not something you switch on in a crisis. It is something you build through consistent training when nothing dramatic is happening. Daily rituals are your forge. They are the disciplined acts that anchor your focus, sharpen your awareness, and strengthen your spirit, even when you don't feel like doing them. These rituals can be simple, but they must be intentional. A morning routine where you wake up at a set time, avoid your phone, breathe deeply, and set your intentions is not just self-care, it's mental conditioning. Journaling your thoughts, fears, and goals each day trains you to see your inner battlefield clearly instead of being ruled by chaos. Physical training, whether it's a run, a workout, or martial practice, doesn't only strengthen your body, it teaches your mind to endure discomfort and keep going. The Japanese idea of keiko, practice with the spirit of respect and depth, reminds you that repetition is sacred, not boring. When you repeat your rituals, you are engraving strength into your nervous system. The actions may look ordinary from the outside, but internally you are forging a sharper, calmer, more resilient version of yourself. Daily mental training also includes moments of stillness where you learn to command your own mind. Meditation, focused breathing, or even a few minutes of silent observation each day help you build distance from your thoughts and emotions. Instead of being dragged by anxiety, anger, or distraction, you learn to watch them rise and fall like waves. The Japanese concepts of zazen and musin, seated meditation, and no mind, are rooted in this discipline, returning again and again to the present moment, gently but firmly. When you practice this daily, you are teaching your mind to stay steady under pressure. So when life suddenly throws chaos at you, an argument, a setback, a loss, your mind has already trained for storms in still water. You may feel the impact, but you don't shatter. You respond with clarity because you've practiced being present thousands of times. Over time, these daily rituals of mental training stop feeling like tasks and start becoming part of who you are. You no longer ask, "Do I feel like doing this today?" The ritual itself becomes non-negotiable, like a samurai polishing his blade, no matter the weather. The Japanese idea of kaizen, continuous daily improvement, lives inside these habits. It's not about dramatic transformations overnight. It's about small gains repeated relentlessly. One more page read, one more minute of focus, one more rep, one more honest reflection. Day by day, the compound effect of these rituals reshapes you. You become less reactive, more deliberate, less fragile, more grounded. And when others ask how you became so mentally tough, they'll look for some secret technique or sudden breakthrough. But you'll know the truth. It was built in silence, in the rituals you chose to honor every single day, long before anyone was watching. As we stand together on this path of relentless forging, remember that mental toughness is not born from ease, but from the fires we willingly enter and the enemies we courageously face within. The three enemies, doubt, comfort, and fear, will always test your spirit, but they are not undefeatable. Like the samurai who embraced Hagane no Ishi, the will of steel, you too have the power to shape yourself into something unbreakable. Every moment of awareness, every choice to discipline your emotions, every step taken into discomfort, every command of your focus, every act of courage, every release from ego and outcome, every unwavering commitment, and every daily ritual is another hammer strike on your soul's blade. This journey demands patience, persistence, and profound self-honesty. It asks you to stand firm when the world pulls you apart, and to rise each time you fall. You are not alone on this battlefield. We are a community of warriors, bound by a shared code and a shared vision of greatness. So thank you for your courage, your commitment, and your presence. Now, take this spirit forward. Forge it. Sharpen it. Live it. The path is yours. The blade is yours. The victory is yours.